She was just a 70-year-old woman, politely asking for a table at a restaurant she had visited for decades, but instead of receiving kindness, she was met with humiliation. What the staff didn't realize was that this old woman wasn't just any diner. She was the very heart of the restaurant's legacy. What happens next will leave you speechless. Stay tuned to see how this story unfolds, and make sure to hit that subscribe button for more powerful tales like this one. The sun cast a warm glow over Willow Creek as the unmistakable aroma of baked bread and simmering seafood wafted through the neighborhood. Mama's Table had been a cornerstone of the community for decades. Its comforting dishes and homey atmosphere offering more than just meals, it provided memories. The small restaurant's walls were covered in photos of smiling families, handwritten thank you notes, and a framed picture of Eleanor Harper, the matriarch affectionately known as Mama. Her legacy lingered in every corner, an unspoken reminder of the heart and soul behind the establishment. But the restaurant was changing, and with it the spirit that had made it special. Olivia Stone, the new manager, strode into the dining room with a sense of purpose. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, a sound that echoed in the silent room as staff gathered for the morning meeting. Olivia, in her crisp blazer and perfectly styled hair, exuded confidence. She wasn't here to preserve tradition. She was here to transform. "Good morning," Olivia began, her tone clipped but professional. "Let's get straight to business. We're rebranding. Starting today, this place is no longer Mama's Table. It's Table d'Olivier." Her words hung in the air, met with stunned silence. The familiar name, a beacon of warmth for so many, was being cast aside as if it held no significance. "I know this is a lot to take in," Olivia continued, her polished smile unwavering. "But we need to evolve. Willow Creek deserves a fine dining experience, seafood fusion, sophisticated decor, and a clientele that matches the prestige we'll bring to this town." The room remained still, the staff exchanging uneasy glances. Maria, a server who had worked at Mama's Table for 15 years, finally broke the silence. "Miss Stone," she began hesitantly, her voice tinged with apprehension. "People come here for the food they grew up with, the warmth. Are we sure we want to change all that?" Olivia's smile stiffened. "Maria," she said, her voice firm, "people think they want the same old thing until you show them something better. Trust me. When they see what we're creating, they'll forget all about those fried shrimp baskets." Maria lowered her gaze, her hands wringing the edge of her apron. Around her, other staff members shifted uncomfortably, their unease growing. Olivia pressed on, gesturing to her consultant Giovanni, who was leaning casually against the bar. "This is Giovanni," she said, her tone brightening. "He's helping us craft the perfect menu: tuna tartare, scallop ceviche, and black truffle risotto. Elegant, upscale, and unforgettable." Giovanni offered a smooth nod, but his designer glasses didn't conceal the dismissive flick of his gaze as he scanned the modest dining room. To him and Olivia, it seemed, Mama's Table was little more than a blank canvas waiting to be painted over with their high-end vision. As Olivia continued outlining her plans, describing sleek decor and modern lighting, a quiet resistance began to stir among the staff. Mama's Table wasn't just a restaurant to them, it was family. The thought of erasing its character felt like a betrayal. "I understand change is hard," Olivia said, misinterpreting their silence. "But you'll see. This is going to be amazing for everyone." Unbeknownst to Olivia, her plans were about to face an unexpected challenge. Across town, Eleanor Harper was slipping into a pair of comfortable shoes, ready for her weekly visit to Mama's Table. She didn't come to oversee operations or inspect the books. She trusted her family and staff to handle the business. For her, it was simply a chance to sit in her favorite corner, sip her tea, and enjoy the laughter of familiar faces. Eleanor Harper, seated at a small outdoor table she managed to secure, watched the restaurant with a blend of pride and sadness. Despite the sleek new sign reading Table d'Olivier, she could still see traces of the establishment she and her late husband had built. Determined not to let her emotions get the best of her, Eleanor decided to engage with those leaving the restaurant, curious about their impressions of the changes. "Excuse me," she began, her voice warm and inviting as a family passed by. "How was your meal?" The mother of the group hesitated, glancing at her children before speaking. "It was different. We've been coming here for years, but it just doesn't feel the same anymore." "Not the same?" Eleanor asked gently. "What did you miss?" "The crab cakes," the woman said with a wistful smile. "They were my husband's favorite. And the atmosphere. It felt more like home before. Now it's so fancy." Eleanor nodded, her heart aching. She shared stories of the restaurant's beginnings, speaking of the recipes she had crafted and the community it served. "You know, the crab cakes were one of our first dishes," she said. "The secret was a pinch of Old Bay seasoning and a lot of love." The woman's eyes lit up. "Your mama? From Mama's table?" Eleanor chuckled softly. "That's what they called me, yes." The bell above the door jingled softly as Eleanor Harper stepped into the restaurant that bore her legacy. She paused, taking in the unfamiliar scene before her. Gone were the checkered tablecloths and rustic wooden chairs that had made Mama's table feel like home. In their place were sleek metallic fixtures and minimalist decor that gave the space a cold, uninviting feel. The warm smell of garlic butter and freshly baked bread had been replaced by the faint tang of something unrecognizable and uncomfortably sterile. Eleanor's heart sank, her hand tightening around the strap of her handbag. She had known changes were coming, but seeing them firsthand was like watching a piece of her soul slip away. "May I help you?" A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. Eleanor turned to see a young woman with bright orange hair and an impatient expression standing behind the host stand. Her name tag read, Olivia Stone, Manager. Eleanor smiled gently, trying to push aside her initial reaction to the drastic changes. "Yes, dear," Eleanor said, her voice warm and polite. "I'd like a table, please." Olivia's eyes flicked over Eleanor's modest cardigan and sensible shoes. She didn't recognize her, but she'd seen her type before. Elderly regulars clinging to the past, unlikely to appreciate the new vision she was working so hard to implement. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Olivia said, her tone laced with condescension. "We're not quite ready for walk-ins today. Perhaps you could come back another time." Eleanor tilted her head, puzzled. "Not ready? The restaurant seems open. I just want to sit quietly and have my tea." Olivia's patience thinned. "We have some very important guests arriving later, and I need to ensure the space remains perfect. You understand, don't you?" Eleanor blinked, taken aback by the dismissive attitude. She had spent decades building this place into a haven for the community, a place where no one was turned away. To be told she wasn't welcome stung deeply. "I'm not in a rush," Eleanor replied calmly. "I can wait." A flicker of irritation crossed Olivia's face. "Fine," she said curtly. "But would you mind waiting outside? It's a bit crowded in here." Eleanor's smile faltered, but she nodded graciously, unwilling to make a scene. "Of course, dear, I'll wait." As she stepped outside into the crisp morning air, Eleanor found a bench and sat down, her heart heavy. From her vantage point, she could see the comings and goings of staff, the stiff way they moved, and the forced smiles they wore. Something was wrong, and Eleanor felt it in her bones. Inside, Olivia strode through the restaurant, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond the doors. She spotted Giovanni, her consultant, and waved him over. "We're all set for the unveiling, right?" Giovanni gave a confident nod. "Absolutely. The new menu, the decor, it's a masterpiece. Willow Creek has never seen anything like it." Olivia smirked. "Exactly. And once the Harpers see how much profit we're raking in, they'll thank me for dragging this place out of the dark ages." Neither of them noticed the quiet figure standing near the edge of the dining room, Maria, the loyal server who had spent years working alongside Eleanor. She had seen enough. Slipping into the back office, she reached for her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Mr. Harper," she whispered, "you might want to come down here. Your mom's outside, and something's not right." Back outside, Eleanor sat patiently. her thoughts drifting to the countless memories she had made in this very place. Birthdays, anniversaries, first dates. Mama's table had been a witness to the stories of so many lives. Her chest ached at the thought of it all being erased in favor of sleek menus and soulless plating. Then the doors swung open and a young server approached her hesitantly. "Mrs. Harper," she said softly, "would you like to come inside? I can find you a seat." Eleanor's kind eyes met the server's and she smiled gratefully. "Thank you, dear, that would be lovely." As Eleanor rose and followed the server, Olivia's voice rang out sharply from across the room. "Excuse me," Olivia snapped, marching over. "What is she doing back in here?" The server's face flushed. I thought—" "That's enough," Olivia cut her off, turning to Eleanor with a forced smile. "Ma'am, I really must insist you leave. I don't want any disruptions before our big event." Eleanor's heart clenched at the coldness in Olivia's tone, but she stood her ground. "Young lady," she said gently, "I've been part of this restaurant longer than you've been alive. I've seen it through good times and bad, and I don't plan on leaving without understanding what's happening here." Olivia's eyes narrowed, her composure slipping. "Listen, I don't have time for this," she said, her voice rising. "Either you leave, or I'll have you escorted out." Before Eleanor could respond, the doors opened once more, and in walked James Harper, his expression a mix of concern and quiet anger. "Mom," James called, striding toward her, "is everything all right?" Eleanor's face softened at the sight of her son, and she reached for his arm. "I'm fine, dear," she said, though her voice betrayed her weariness. "But we need to talk." James turned his sharp gaze on Olivia. "What exactly is going on here?" he demanded. Olivia paled, realizing too late that the woman she had dismissed was not just an elderly diner, but the very foundation of the restaurant she sought to reinvent. The atmosphere in the dining room turned icy as James Harper, the restaurant's owner, stood protectively by his mother, Eleanor Harper. Olivia Stone, the ambitious new manager, was visibly flustered, but quickly masked her unease with a brittle smile. "Mr. Harper," Olivia began, her voice tight with forced politeness, "I didn't realize Mrs. Harper was—" "My mother," James finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. His eyes scanned the dining room, the new decor, and the unfamiliar menu clutched in the hands of a nearby diner. "What's going on here?" Olivia straightened, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "I was just about to finalize everything for the big relaunch. We've rebranded the restaurant as Table d'Olivier, a modern seafood fusion concept designed to attract a higher-end clientele." Eleanor's brows furrowed as she looked at her son. "Rebranded? James, when did you decide on this?" James's jaw tightened. "I didn't, Olivia. I hired you to make improvements, not gut the soul of the place." Olivia's smile wavered, but she pressed on. "With all due respect, Mr. Harper, the old menu was outdated, the decor was tired, and quite frankly, the clientele wasn't bringing in enough profit. This rebrand will elevate the restaurant's image." Eleanor, who had remained composed, couldn't stay silent any longer. "Profit? Image? Olivia, this restaurant wasn't built on fancy concepts or flashy menus. It's about people, about community. Those families who came here for comfort after a hard day, the young couples who celebrated anniversaries over our seafood platters, the children who couldn't wait for a slice of our signature pie. That's what made Mama's table special." James looked at his mother, pride flickering in his eyes before turning back to Olivia. "I think my mother has a point. Did you consider any of this before deciding on these changes?" Olivia's frustration bubbled to the surface. "Mr. Harper, I've done extensive market research. Upscale fusion restaurants are trending. Nostalgia doesn't pay the bills." At that moment, a nearby diner chimed in, an older man who had been reading the new menu with a frown. "You know what does pay the bills? Happy customers. I've been coming here for 30 years and I don't see a single dish I recognize." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Another customer, a young mother with 2 kids, added, "I came for the crab cakes my grandmother loved. My kids were so excited, but..." This doesn't even feel like the same place." Olivia's face reddened as she stammered, "Change is always hard at first. You'll see, it'll grow on you." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Change isn't the problem, dear. Change can be good. But when you strip away the heart of something, what made it meaningful, you lose more than you gain." Nearby staff members who had been silently observing began nodding in agreement. Maria, the loyal server who had called James, spoke up. "Mrs. Harper is right. The staff misses the old menu too. We knew it inside and out, and so did the customers. Now it feels like we're pretending to be something we're not." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Olivia, it's clear you had good intentions, but you didn't understand what this place stands for. Mama's Table is more than just a restaurant. It's a part of this community." Before Olivia could respond, Eleanor gently touched James's arm. "Let me speak to her." James stepped back, watching his mother with quiet admiration. Eleanor turned to Olivia, her kind eyes softening. "You're young and you want to make your mark. I understand that. But being a leader isn't about forcing your vision onto others. It's about listening, understanding, and finding ways to honor what's already there while helping it grow." Olivia blinked, caught off guard by Eleanor's tone. For a moment, her defensiveness cracked and doubt crept into her expression. I thought I was helping." Eleanor smiled gently. "Helping means learning what people truly need, not what you think they should want." As the room grew quiet, Olivia lowered her gaze. The confidence that had carried her through every meeting and decision now felt hollow in the face of Eleanor's sincerity. James placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Why don't we take a step back? Let's reevaluate everything. Together. But for now, I think we need to bring back what made Mama's Table special." The crowd of diners applauded softly, their approval palpable. Olivia nodded reluctantly, her ambitions tempered by a newfound humility. Eleanor smiled warmly at her son. "Thank you, James, for listening." She turned to the diners, her voice rising just enough for everyone to hear. "And thank you, everyone, for reminding us of what truly matters." As the applause grew louder, Olivia stepped aside, knowing her role in the restaurant's future would need to change. For the first time, she felt the weight of the community's expectations and the hope that she could rise to meet them. The atmosphere in Mama's Table buzzed with quiet anticipation as James Harper led his mother, Eleanor, toward a private table near the center of the restaurant. Eleanor's calm demeanor masked a storm of emotions: hurt from Olivia's treatment, pride in the restaurant's legacy, and worry about its future. James turned to Olivia, who lingered near the counter, her face pale. "Olivia," he called firmly, "join us for a moment." Olivia hesitated but obeyed, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She glanced at the diners, many of whom were whispering to one another, their gazes shifting between her and Eleanor. Eleanor looked up at Olivia, her expression soft but resolute. "Please sit, dear," she said gently. Olivia lowered herself into the chair, her confidence from earlier now replaced by unease. James remained standing, his presence commanding attention. "Before we go any further, Olivia, there's something you need to understand," he began, his voice steady. "Mama's Table isn't just another restaurant. It's a piece of our family's history and this community's heart." Eleanor leaned forward, her hands folded neatly on the table. "Do you know why it's called Mama's Table, Olivia?" she asked, her tone inviting but firm. Olivia nodded hesitantly. "I assumed it was just a name, a branding choice." Eleanor smiled faintly, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "It's much more than that. When my husband and I started this place, it was with one goal in mind: to create a space where everyone, no matter their background, felt like they had a seat at the table. This table." She gestured toward the well-worn wooden centerpiece in the middle of the dining room. The edges were rounded from years of use, and countless carvings of initials adorned its surface, a testament to decades of memories. "This was the first table we ever bought," Eleanor continued. "We couldn't afford more when we opened, so we used it for everything: eating, planning, serving. Over time, it became a symbol. Families gathered here, friends reconnected, and strangers became part of something bigger. The room grew quiet as diners leaned closer, captivated by Eleanor's story. Even Olivia seemed moved, her eyes darting to the table as though seeing it for the first time. James stepped in. "Olivia, I hired you because I believed in your potential, but what you've done has disconnected us from everything this place stands for. Changing the name, the menu, it's like trying to erase a memory, and that's not what we're about." Olivia's voice trembled as she responded. "I thought I was helping. I wanted to make it better. More modern." Eleanor reached across the table, her hand lightly touching Olivia's. "Growth is good, my dear, but it should never come at the cost of the heart and soul of what makes something special. Change is meant to uplift, not erase." At that moment, the door swung open and several regulars entered, including Mrs. Wilkins, an elderly woman who had dined at Mama's table every Sunday for over 20 years. She saw Eleanor and broke into a wide smile. "Eleanor!" she exclaimed, making her way over. "Oh, it's so good to see you here. We were worried about all these changes. This place just hasn't felt the same." Eleanor stood and embraced her, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, Clara. That means so much to me." The other diners nodded in agreement, their murmurs growing louder as they voiced their support for the restaurant's original identity. James turned back to Olivia. "Do you hear that? These are the people who've kept this restaurant alive, not market trends or consultants. Them." Olivia swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I didn't realize I was so focused on the future that I ignored the present." Eleanor gave her a kind smile. "It takes courage to admit that, but now you have a choice, to double down on the wrong path or to join us in making things right." Olivia took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing as she nodded. "I want to help. I want to fix this." James looked at her with a mix of relief and determination. "Then let's start now. The first step is restoring the menu and the name. No more table d'Olivier. This is Mama's table, and it always will be." Cheers erupted from the diners, and for the first time that evening Olivia smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. She looked at Eleanor, who reached out and squeezed her hand. "Welcome to the family," Eleanor said warmly. As the night wore on, the restaurant seemed to come alive again. Diners laughed and shared stories, the staff buzzed with renewed energy, and the kitchen churned out the beloved dishes that had defined Mama's table for decades. For Eleanor, the night was a bittersweet reminder of the power of legacy and the importance of protecting it. For Olivia, it was a humbling lesson in listening, learning, and embracing the values that truly matter. The next morning, Mama's table was a hive of activity. The air was thick with the sense of freshly baked bread and simmering chowder, but beneath the usual bustle was a sense of purpose, a collective mission to bring the heart of the restaurant back to life. James Harper stood at the front of the dining room, a clipboard in hand. His voice carried over the chatter of the staff as he laid out the plan. "We're bringing back the old menu starting today. No delays, no compromises. Every dish that's made Mama's table a second home to our diners. Clam chowder, salmon burgers, fried catfish, they're all coming back." The staff cheered, their faces lighting up with relief and excitement. For weeks they had watched customers leave unsatisfied, disheartened by the abrupt changes. Now they felt as though they were reclaiming something sacred. At the back of the room, Eleanor Harper quietly observed the scene, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She felt a swell of pride watching her son take charge and the staff rallying behind him. This wasn't just about food. It was about preserving the soul of a place that had been a cornerstone of the community for decades. Olivia stood to the side, her shoulders slightly hunched. She had volunteered to stay on and help with the transition, determined to prove she was ready to make amends. It was clear she felt out of place, but Eleanor had encouraged her to remain. "Redemption doesn't come from walking away," she'd said gently. "It comes from putting in the work to set things right." As James continued outlining the plan, Olivia tentatively raised her hand. I'd like to help organize the kitchen," she said, her voice steady but unsure. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to make it right. James nodded, acknowledging her effort. Good. Start by meeting with the kitchen staff. They'll need someone to coordinate the changes, and it might as well be you. Olivia offered a small smile and hurried toward the kitchen. Eleanor watched her go, feeling a glimmer of hope for the young woman. She could see Olivia's potential, if only she could learn to balance ambition with humility. As the day unfolded, the restaurant underwent a transformation. The new menus were replaced with fresh prints of the classics, their corners still crisp from the printer. Staff members hustled to set up tables with their signature homey touches, checkered napkins, simple flower arrangements, and handwritten specials on the chalkboard by the door. Regular customers began trickling in, their faces lighting up when they saw the familiar dishes on the menu. One elderly couple beamed as their server placed a steaming plate of fried catfish in front of them. "Now this," the man said, tapping his fork against the plate, "is what I call Mama's table." In the kitchen, Olivia worked closely with the chefs, her earlier aloofness replaced by a newfound attentiveness. She asked questions, took notes, and listened carefully to their input. At one point, she turned to the head chef, Russell, and said, "I didn't realize how much these dishes mean to people. I get it now." Russell gave her a gruff nod. "Better late than never." By evening, the dining room was packed. A warm glow from the overhead lights bathed the room, and the buzz of conversation filled the air. It felt like a homecoming, a return to what Mama's table had always been. Eleanor moved from table to table, greeting guests with her signature warmth. "It's so good to see you again," she said to one diner, clasping their hand. "Thank you for sticking with us." When she reached a table near the window, she paused. Olivia was seated with a group of staff members, laughing at something one of them had said. It was the first time Eleanor had seen her truly relaxed. It gave her hope that Olivia could find her place, not as someone trying to reinvent the wheel, but as someone who valued the legacy she had almost lost. James approached Eleanor, a satisfied smile on his face. "We did it, Mom," he said, his voice filled with pride. "It's back." Eleanor's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she looked around the bustling room. "No, James," she replied softly. "It never left. We just needed to remember why we started." As the evening wound down, Eleanor stood in the middle of the dining room, tapping a spoon against her glass to draw attention. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you for believing in this place and for sticking with us through the ups and downs. Mama's Table has always been more than a restaurant, it's a family. And every one of you, whether you've been here for decades or just joined today, is part of that family." The diners erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the room. James joined his mother at her side, his arm around her shoulders. Olivia, standing at the edge of the crowd, clapped along, a smile of genuine pride on her face. The night ended with a toast led by Eleanor. To tradition, to community, and to everyone who calls Mama's Table home. Cheers! Glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and for the first time in weeks, the restaurant felt whole again. It was a testament to the power of legacy, the strength of community, and the enduring spirit of a place that refused to lose its soul. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over Mama's Table. A festive buzz filled the air as the restaurant prepared for its grand reopening celebration. String lights crisscrossed the outdoor patio, their gentle twinkle reflecting in the eyes of guests who gathered to honor the legacy of the beloved establishment. Inside, the restaurant was transformed into a space that radiated warmth and nostalgia. The tables were adorned with vases of fresh flowers, handwritten menus, and vintage photos of Mama's Table through the decades. In the center of the dining room, a large chalkboard displayed a message in elegant script. "Welcome back to Mama's Table, where memories are made." Eleanor Harper stood by the entrance, greeting every guest with a warm smile and a heartfelt handshake. Dressed in a modest, elegant dress, she looked every bit the matriarch of the legacy she had built. Her presence radiated strength and compassion, and her eyes sparkled with gratitude as she saw the crowd that had gathered to celebrate not just the restaurant, but what it represented. One by one, familiar faces filled the room. Long-time customers who had watched their children grow up at Mama's table, staff members who had been with the restaurant since its early days, and even local community leaders who had always found comfort in its simple charm. A family entered, their children running excitedly to greet Eleanor. "Miss Eleanor," they exclaimed, wrapping their arms around her. "We missed your cornbread." She chuckled, kneeling to their level. "Well, it's back now, just the way you like it." Nearby, James Harper stood with Olivia. Though Olivia still felt out of place, she had spent the last few days working tirelessly to ensure the reopening was a success. James gave her a nod of approval. "You've done good work, Olivia," he said. "Thank you for staying." Olivia managed a small smile. "I just wanted to help fix what I almost broke." Eleanor caught their exchange and joined them, placing a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "What matters is that you stayed to make things right," she said gently. "That takes courage." As the evening progressed, the highlight of the celebration unfolded. Eleanor stood at the front of the room, a microphone in hand. The room quieted, the energy shifting to one of anticipation and reverence. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Eleanor began, her voice steady and filled with emotion. "Mama's table has always been more than a restaurant. It's been a place where stories are shared, friendships are formed, and memories are made. And tonight we celebrate not just the food, but the people who make this place special." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "In our journey, we almost lost sight of what Mama's table truly is. But because of your love and support, we've been reminded that change is only meaningful when it respects the heart of what came before." The crowd broke into applause, their cheers resounding in agreement. Eleanor continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I want to thank my son, James, for stepping up to protect this legacy, and Olivia, for showing us that it's never too late to grow and learn. And to our customers, our family, thank you for reminding us that what makes Mama's table special is the love we share in every meal." After her speech, the crowd toasted to the future of Mama's table, raising their glasses high. The clinking of glasses harmonized with the laughter and joy that filled the room. Eleanor stood with James and Olivia, watching as guests enjoyed their favorite dishes, exchanged stories, and embraced the spirit of togetherness. Later, as the festivities began to wind down, a young couple approached Eleanor. "Thank you for bringing this place back," they said. "We had our first date here years ago, and now we're bringing our little one." The woman held up a baby wrapped in a soft blanket. Eleanor's heart swelled with emotion as she touched the baby's tiny hand. "It's families like yours that make this place what it is," she said warmly. As the evening came to a close, Eleanor stood outside looking at the glowing sign that read Mama's Table. She felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Beside her, James placed an arm around her shoulders. "We did it, Mom," he said quietly. She smiled, leaning into his embrace. "No, James, we all did it. This isn't just ours. It belongs to everyone who walks through those doors." A few steps away, Olivia watched the Harpers, a small smile tugging at her lips. Though her journey had been rocky, she had found something more valuable than profit, an understanding of what truly matters. Before leaving, Eleanor turned to address the remaining staff and guests. "As we move forward, let's remember this. Change is important, but it should never erase the values and traditions that bring us together. Let Mama's Table be a reminder that legacy isn't about the past, it's about the love we carry into the future." The crowd erupted into applause once more, their hearts full of hope and gratitude. That night, as the last guest left and the lights dimmed, Eleanor stood in the quiet dining room. She placed her hand on one of the tables, her heart full of memories and promise. Mama's Table was more than a restaurant, it was a home, and its doors would always be open to anyone who needed a seat at the table. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, challenge, and empower. Together, we can keep these conversations alive and build a better tomorrow, one story at a time. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below.